Okay. I know in the previous episode I was talking about the dating market, but I feel like this episode's gonna go a little bit deeper than that. Not in the dating market, but for the people that are eyeing, some sort of union or have been in some sort of union or are being brought together in some sort of union, if you could call it that. Because this episode revolves around family. For those that have started them, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and also for those that are avoiding them, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Because interestingly enough, it's like there's people that are avoiding getting themselves into a union or something long term in terms of a partnership and possibly with kids, and they don't even know that they're doing it. Either way, I am going to get into all of that, but before I can put some life into any of it, I first need to talk about an American billionaire that is trying to take away life instead of give it. Now, there's a billionaire from Ohio who is planning a $20 million subdive to prove deep-sea expeditions can be quote-unquote life-changing. Now, I don't know if it's just me that thinks this, but isn't it barely a year since Ocean Gate happened? I think we already have proof that this can be life-changing. It can practically change your life from being with you to not being yours anymore. Do you really need more proof than that, though?
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Okay, before I can get into why I find this to be a very, very dumb idea and something that I think just proves that some people just never really learn, I'm gonna read the very short story that came with this entire post, which says, and I quote, Larry Connor, a Dayton entrepreneur and founder of the Connor Group, plans a deep-sea submersible dive to Titanic depths to prove the safety of personal subs. This follows last year's Ocean Gate vessel implosion that killed 5 passengers. Connor, who has explored the Mariana Trench and International Space Station, will undertake the dive with Triton Submarines co-founder Patrick Leahy in a Triton 4000/2 Abyssal Explorer. The goal is to demonstrate safe, repeatable deep-sea exploration. End quote. Okay, so not only is he trying to do this alone, but he's also doing it with someone else. And yes, he has explored the Mariana Trench, but I don't think a human being has actually ever gone to the Mariana Trench. It's just equipment that's been sent there. The fact that these guys are thinking, you know what, let's go to where the Titanic is. I don't know. Ocean Gate happened last year. And for anyone that probably gives much of a damn, even though you don't give a damn, I kid you not, just go and watch the simulation of what happened to the Ocean Gate people when they died. The way the pressure just caved in, and it was almost like an instantaneous thing. It just snapped them up and just shut the entire vessel and practically just pancaked it. And it was so quick and so instantaneous that, a couple of billionaires, I think a millionaire and some billionaire's son just got killed like that. And this was something that they had been working on for a bit of a while. Now, granted, they didn't consult proper bodies that are in charge of such shit. They did not consult with the actual experts, and even experts and those bodies told them that it's a bad idea, and they decided to do it. Now, in this particular case, I think it's the public that is saying, you know what, this is a bad idea. The bodies themselves, we have no information about them being involved in this entire thing, but honestly, we literally just lost a bunch of people through this exact same type of shit not too long ago. Do you really want to try it now? I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, but I feel like sometimes some billionaires just have way more money than sense, and then you end up with ideas like this. Or maybe I'm just fearful. Either way, if the guy wants to kill himself, that's his choice. I am going to leave it at that and start the podcast in a much better way that involves me going down a much better path and trying to chase the Titanic, which is already gone, by saying, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who definitely wants to go down on a woman. Not to the Titanic. Fuck that shit. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I find it very hard that some people still want to go that deep into the ocean. Don't get me wrong. The idea of going that deep is a human achievement that is definitely something to be recognized for, but Ocean Gate just recently happened. We could have just kept quiet on this entire thing and just waited until we have the proper testing and the proper bodies that get the proper funding from different governments have actually gone and tried it and considered it safe for humans to go there. Then again, like I said, billionaires can have more money than sense, so I might as well forget it. Either way, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope you listen all the way till the end. I have a bunch of minutes of some very interesting shit that I want to talk about. And considering that this is a Friday episode, it means that I do not just get to talk about one topic. It means that I get to go on X and I get to look at some of the things that you guys say online and break them down and, see if I can find some sense there. And this also means that you can submit the different tweets that you'd like me to break down, whether it's on X, whether it's on Facebook or IG. And I will get into how in a little bit of a second, because it's a very simple drill, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BugakaTheD, which happens to be my personal X handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly on IG and on Facebook. If it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, or ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @TheBreaktime_podcast on IG and @TheBreaktime_podcast on Facebook. The DMs are always open, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. Now, I have a bunch of tweets that I need to get into, but before I can get into any of that, I first want to talk about something that should be beneficial to the women, should be considered to be a good thing for women, but the reaction I saw online has made me start to question if women are really to be trusted in a lot of what it is that they say. And I am going to get into that in a bit of a second. But before I can do that, first of all, for those of you all that might care to know, we are officially on YouTube Music. So you can actually go and search for the Break Time Podcast on YouTube Music and you will find it. And the episodes are going to be up to date. I recently got there and, the entire transition process has been pretty good so far. And, we're hoping to make some strides and some benefits from that particular move. But all in all, thank you so much for listening. Even though you haven't been on YouTube Music, if you are on YouTube Music, thank you so much for listening. I hope you continue listening there. And I hope the episodes are entertaining. If they're not, there's usually a link in the description to give me your feedback. But all in all, with that said, let's move it on to the story that I was talking about now. That is a male birth control option that is in the works, that is expected to arrive soon, and it is supposed to come in the form of a hormonal gel. Now, when I saw this news, I was pretty ecstatic. I was super happy because, you know what? I don't have to worry about, do I have to get a condom? Is she having an IUD? Is my pullout game supposed to be that good? Because if you have something like this, it actually kind of works to your favor. Also, it makes for a pretty good joke. As someone did on Twitter when they were like, you know what? When you're just about to do it and you're like, you know what? Let me put my sunblock on. And by sun, they meant SON, block on. Which is actually a pretty nice joke. It's just that, my delivery here is a little bit bad. But all in all, when you kind of look at it, I saw an example of the photo that was posted up online and that shit looks about as white as cum, and I'm like, it's probably gonna look like I'm applying my own cum on myself. But, that's a little beyond the point. And also that's a little TMI. But I think the most interesting part was how women were reacting to this information. You'd actually expect that the women would be happy, that they'd be overjoyed, that men are having other birth control options. So, it's definitely going to be a good thing for them. But no. These women were spiteful. And the reason for being spiteful is apparently because women have been having their birth control options by insertion, by, placing inside their reproductive system, having some sort of injection happening, and it's causing weight gain and shit, but us guys are just getting some sort of hormonal gel. If this doesn't show the patriarchy, if this isn't a version of misogyny, I don't know what the fuck that is. I have seen women losing their shits about this entire thing, and I'm like, honestly, if anything, if you guys were as nice as you say you are, you'd probably be happy for us, because we don't have to go through the same pains that you're going through. Modern medicine has advanced to a point where we don't have to go through the pains and the issues and the feelings of intrusion in terms of getting a birth control in us. And instead of you guys being happy, you're pissed. I don't know. It's making me question a couple of things. I know women usually like to say, if babies were as a result of the female orgasm, then there'd only be 11 people on the earth. And, women have been saying this for a very long time. But honestly speaking, if women were having kids because the men wanted to have those kids, I honestly think we'd probably only have 100 people on this planet. The number of times that guys have had a babe get pregnant because she wanted to or by accident, or so they've said, has been immense. Like, there's a lot of women that have baby trapped men, and even though people talk about men baby trapping women nowadays, honestly, I know for a fact that there's more women that are baby trapping men. Otherwise, the number of gold diggers that would have been out here would have been much, much less. And also, they probably wouldn't be gold digging all that much. They'd actually try to be genuinely good people to the rich people that they're trying to appeal to. When you kind of think about it, imagine you being told by your babe that she's pregnant. You're literally gonna look at her and be like, nah, I was on the gel. I lubed up before I went in there. That's why that shit was so slippery when you were holding me. Like, whatever the hell it is you're thinking, it's not my kid. I was on the gel. And honestly, that is going to turn a lot of women very, very pissed off, because imagine if the gel probably isn't one of those things that leaves a mark or you can't see it. So it's almost like lotion. So after you've applied it, it's gone. It's already in your system. It's not like you can see it at the top as like a shiny thing. So the number of babes that will be losing out in the name of, oh, whose kid is this? This ain't my kid. Like, the number of women that will be losing out like that will be huge. It'll be bloody huge. I think that's why babes are actually losing their shits about it. Because for the first time, guys are going to be able to take back the reproductive capability to have a kid with you, and you may not even know about it. Especially if it's like a quickie and y'all haven't taken off your clothes, so whatever he's been applying on his shoulder, you can't see. Like, think about that for a quick second. Like, the repercussions on population might actually be pretty wild. But then again, considering that it is something that is hormonal, there are definitely going to be side effects around it. So the question is it going to be manageable enough? Because if it isn't, there's a lot of guys that will just go back to doing it raw without the gel and without a condom. And as far as risky goes, those guys are definitely the ones that like to take risks. But all in all, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our tweets for this episode. So on to our very first tweet, and this one was actually posted up by a dude. And interestingly enough, it involves pregnancy. And it says, and I quote, "My girlfriend got impregnated by someone else. She's asking me to hang in there until she gives birth, and she will take the child to the father, then we continue with the relationship. What exactly is this?" End quote. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory that this is about as stupid and about as audacious as it gets with people. Well, granted, people have way more audacity than this, but this is very, very well in the line of just pure audacity and zero sense. Because why the fuck would you say yes to this? Okay, maybe she's a surrogate and she's getting paid good money, and she's just having the kid for that family or for that person, and once the kid is produced, she's gonna get her money and she's gonna be good to go. If it's that, then that makes sense. Stick with that shorty. She clearly has a pretty good idea on how to make money. She's using her body, and it can be harmful and it can be, a risk take of the highest degree, but you know what? It's okay. She's using it to make money. My problem is, now, if she's not a surrogate mom, if she's not trying to have the kid on behalf of someone else, then my nigga, like, why the fuck are you still there? I know the shorty is saying, I'll just give the kid, then we continue to the relationship, but if you were to say yes, no matter how in love you are, you automatically turn into a cuck. Like, the only thing that could get any worse than this is if you are to sit right next to her, she's getting piped by another dude. Because what the fuck? And I know there's other questions that people are asking, like, how is she so sure that the kid is the other guy's and not yours? And honestly, that one isn't even that hard to actually figure out, because it goes back to something that I was told a bunch of years back, even before I started this podcast, but I've repeated it on this podcast and even added my own twist to it. And it was actually a babe who told me this while I was still in university, and she made sure she said, and these were her exact words, "Denver, women choose their baby daddies." And I've always held on to that belief, and on top of that, I even added my own spin to it and said, if she says she didn't choose her baby daddy, then there's a pretty good chance that she was either naive or stupid, or possibly even both. Now, of course, that sounds a little bit harsh, but sometimes when you kind of think about it at its very core, some of that shit's actually true. But of course, debatable, as is many things on this episode. But still, like, this is the proof that we get where babes usually know. So whatever the hell she's telling you about, oh, you know, I couldn't have planned for this, I didn't know this, she might not have planned for it, but she probably 9 times out of 10, not unless if she was fucking too many guys, knows who the father is. Even though she was smashing them niggas raw, she'll most probably know who the father is. Because if a woman does not want you to be the father to her children, if she sees you and she sees that all you have is good dick and nothing else, that babe will not get pregnant. And if she does, she will get rid of that pregnancy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this to say that women will fuck around and they'll fuck all sorts of different dudes. No, not every woman does it, but for those that will screw around, they know very well who it is that they'd want to go long term with. They know who it is that they'd be willing to have a kid with. And there are moments where a babe will smash a dude and know very well, if I get a kid with this guy, I am fucked. So guess what they decide to do? They will make sure that they do not get a kid from this dude. And even if they do, they will ensure that they do not keep that kid, because they know very well they do not want that kind of person to be the father to their child. And then there's other guys that they look and they're like, oh my goodness, I would give this man twins, triplets even, quadruplets if he asked. So fellas, whatever it is that you're told by a babe, whether it was an accident or we didn't plan for that shit, always remember, women choose their baby daddies. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a woman who said, and I quote, "Sorry, but if your man is pressed about you taking his last name, he's a benevolent misogynist at best." End quote. Now, I feel like I discussed this before, but I believe that if you think that you wanting your woman to take up your last name makes you a misogynist, then I think you have other problems and you don't even know what misogyny is. Because, okay, I've explained this before, how you taking up the last name makes you a part of the family, and that's, you know, like a big part of the reason my dowry is paid and shit, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think I need to go too deep into the entire thing, because, you know, the long and short of it is you are taking up his last name because you are becoming a part of his family. And if you're a part of his family, then there's a certain sort of, you know, I don't want to say boundaries. It's almost like a dome where now you are supposed to be protected and provided for by that family. And, you know, that's actually how it's supposed to be. So if you don't want to take up his last name, it's like you're rejecting the sort of protections that come with that name. And if anything, it's harder for you to actually tell people that you've been spoken for, because you do not share your husband's name, or you at least you did not take up the same name such that you could say that you belong to the same family. Now, of course, because there's a reputation element around it, you can choose to not take it, or you can choose to substitute that name for yours so he takes up your name if there's some sort of benefit that can come from that. Say, for example, if I was dating one of the daughters of the Rothschild family and we got married, I wouldn't mind dropping my name to also be called Rothschild, because the Rothschild name has a bunch of power attached to it. Like, that would be a massive win for me. Can I build out my name? Yes, definitely. Can I get it a Rothschild name? Possible, but very, very hard. So I wouldn't probably mind doing that. But you decide not to take up your husband's name because you just don't feel like taking up your husband's name. Like, I know that most of what we're talking about is based off of culture, but like, is it really that big of a problem for you? Maybe you're the one that's a misandrist and you just have some sort of hate towards guys. But all in all, like, I find it very odd that women today are like, I don't want to take up his name, and yet whenever it'll come to shit like maybe a divorce or splitting of wealth, if the guy has passed, you all of a sudden want a share in the wealth. Oh, you know, I was with him, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you know, he built that wealth when we're together. Oh, you know, me and him. But when it comes to you taking up his name, it's suddenly a big issue. Like, I don't know. It's like they want this sense of independent identity, but at the same time want the benefits of, you know, being claimed and being spoken for by another man using his name, and, you know, the protections that come with you being a part of his family, such as, you know, protection and provision. Like, if you're in his family, he is obligated to protect and provide for you. But if you can't be identified as a part of his family, then that becomes harder to do. Or at least, you know, from a cultural level, you could argue that out. Although, then again, maybe I'm too young to understand. Maybe it's because I'm a man and I'm speaking for it, and if I was a woman, probably my mindset would be particularly different. Either way, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of... I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very final tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a guy who said, and I quote, "A baby daddy will always have a buyback clause, quote unquote. All he has to do is act right for 6 months consistently, fund the child's birthday party, and then paint the idea of a happy family in her mind." End quote. Okay, is this true? To a certain degree. To a certain degree, it's true. I wouldn't say that it's universally true or it'll always be there, but especially at the initial stage when the baby is quite young, when the kid is quite young, then that actually does open itself up pretty well. Because especially when the mom is like a new mom and she just had the kid and she's busy trying to figure a bunch of life out, by design, it'll just be harder for her because she has to juggle around being a mom and taking care of a baby and also trying to figure her life out. So as much help as she can get, the better it is. And this is one of those places where you have to go back to that very fundamental rule of sales and marketing, which is it is better to keep an existing customer than to go out and look for a new one. So if the guy is present there, if the guy chooses to come back, at that point in time, wants to take care of the babe and he's treating her nicely, is helping take care of the kid pretty well, then yeah, it's a lot easier for her to picture them having a happy family if the guy is actually genuinely good, as opposed to her not being with this guy and choosing to go and look for love somewhere else and trying to find a guy that'll be a stepfather to this kid. Because first of all, when you look at the dating market, it's not particularly kind to single moms. At least when you look at it from, I'm trying to get a long-term partner kind of view. It's not very good to single moms. On top of that, there is the added pressure and the added workload of being a mom. Like, whether single, whether you're even being assisted by other people, just being a mom in and of itself is a shit ton of work. So for her to go and start looking for partners at that time is particularly hard as well. Then on top of that, the number of guys that would be comfortable taking care of someone else's kid is actually not that big. There's not that many guys that are very comfortable, being a stepfather, not even just being a stepfather, but being a parent with limits, but also having some level of sharing of your partner with the baby daddy, because this guy is also a parent to this kid. The kid is biologically his, so it would be a very asshole-like and a very wrong move for you to be like, no, he shouldn't interact with the kid. So for a lot of guys, because they do not want to be responsible for someone else's kid, they do not want to be a part-time parent with full-time responsibility, and they also do not want to deal with the baby mama, baby daddy drama, they wouldn't elect to be with a single mom all that easily. But if you decide to go back to the person that gave you the baby and you guys choose to work it out, especially if the guy is reasonable enough and he's good, even though you guys don't love each other and you guys are just united by the fact that the kid is there, you can actually have a pretty good life together. Like, not all unions, not all partnerships, not all families are built upon the idea that the parents came together because they were in love. Nah, sometimes it was literally two people that had a kid and they were like, you know what, we'll just come together and we'll make it work, and they've made it work. There's also people that came together because they were like, you know what, I'm interested in getting married, you're interested in getting married, let's see how this goes down. Not everyone came up because of love. Love is a recent thing for people in terms of reasoning for being together. So honestly, I do think that the buyback clause is a very viable thing and it does work. It doesn't necessarily work if you treat the woman like shit to a certain degree. And also if you're an asshole and you come back, you will not have that buyback clause for very long. So some guys actually do end up being assholes or just plain bad people towards the woman. And, they end up kind of killing that buyback clause. Also, some guys don't want the buyback clause at all. Like, the woman might actually be bad. Actually, the woman might be weaponizing the child against you. So it's not like you want that buyback clause even if it existed. So you kind of have to leave it there. Although then again, the buyback clause maybe does exist, it's just the amount of effort and the amount of pressure that the guy has to put so that the two of them can be together. And I'm wrong about all of this shit. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is at the Breaktime Podcast and the Breaktime_podcast, respectively. And there's also the link in the description to give me direct feedback. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.